The KJV is extraordinarily misleading, where it speaks about rightly dividing. And that has given dispensationalists an excuse to chop the New Testament into pieces and create havoc. So rightly dividing the word of truth doesn't mean you can divide the New Testament into sections and say, for example, you can maintain wrongly that the gospel of the kingdom is not for us. I say it absolutely is for us. The gospel that we need to believe is the gospel that Jesus preached, the gospel of the kingdom, the same gospel that Paul preached, gospel of the kingdom, and must be preached then in the Great Commission right until the end of the age. So my point is simply that the King James Version, unintentionally talking about rightly dividing, gave the dispensationalists a heyday, and they misused that verse. So don't do the King James. And generally, don't want to do the King James anyway, because its manuscripts are not as original as some of the ones we have since it was translated. And anyway, that English is very fogged and difficult for people. So the King James only idea is not one that any responsible scholar would take that seriously. Use the New American Standard Updated Version or the RSV or even the RV, the Revised Version, and you'll get a much clearer English and also better manuscript version than you have in the King James.
By the way, let's show how you rendered that. Be diligent to present yourself approved to God, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, soundly expounding. Now, this is a very high paraphrasic version.
So I have added the word gospel. You see here, then the phrase word of God is not, I repeat, not a synonym for the Bible. Yes, in the Bible, I believe you have the words of God, the inspired words of God. But the word of God is, strictly speaking, a technical phrase meaning the gospel, namely the gospel of the kingdom. So I've taken the liberty of reminding people of that very obvious fact by giving you gospel word rather than just word of the truth. That's what that means in that context. And translators try to get over to you the meaning as it was first intended, where originalists try to get at the truth of the meaning of the words as they were written in that time period. So that's my intention there, to remind you that the word of God is not a synonym for the Bible. It is an exact phrase to mean the gospel about the kingdom. In the parable of the sower, Matthew speaks of the gospel of the kingdom, the word of the kingdom. Mark may call it the word of God. Luke calls it the word of God. Mark probably calls it the word. The word is the same as the word of God. But if you don't know it's the same as the word of the kingdom, you're missing out on a huge amount of good understanding, I suggest.